Well, with this new research study that Thomas conducted, why was it undertaken? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So why? Well, I'm hearing it, I'm feeling it, I'm seeing it. We really wanted to understand and get more details if it's really across the board or if it's an anomaly in a few of the customers and segments that we're talking to. So that's kind of why we did it. What we did was we chose some global manufacturers and distributors in three major markets. We call them general industrial, power transmission, motion control, and pipe valves and fittings. It was a third-party conducted study. We didn't want to bias the results by us doing it, if you will. And we did dozens of qualitative, in-depth interviews. We interviewed people from roles of e-business, marketing, IT, product management, and got their feedback. One of the things I think was really interesting, this is a really sensitive subject. A lot of people know it's bad, and they didn't want to talk to us. They didn't want to have to get and be interviewed and tell us how really bad it was. So we thought that was something interesting that we find out. But at the end of the day, our goal was to really rip the Band-Aid off this problem, put some salt in it, and really, at the end of the day, fix the problem, heal it. You have to shine the sun on it to fix it, if you will. And that's what we were trying to do with the study.
What were some of the key findings?
The key findings I would put into three basic categories. With the general finding that I thought was interesting, I mentioned a second ago, but it was difficult, and people were unwilling, and they thought it might reflect back on them or their companies negatively. So I think that was one of our general findings. People were kind of, should I talk about this? But again, once we told them it was non-retribution, if you will, and anonymous, they were much more willing. So that was a general finding that people know about it. The manufacturers and the distributor personnel who actually work with the data, you're getting past the manager down to the data people, actually were more willing to talk about it, but it was really funny. They didn't see it as a problem that could be solved. They thought that this is mission impossible, and this is just the way it is kind of deal. I thought that was a real interesting finding, the status quo, if you will. One of the things I thought was real interesting, we thought there was a little problem. It's a lot bigger than a little. It's a serious problem, and it goes tip to tail with these manufacturers and distributors. There's so many different systems out there and so many different formats and people looking for data. The problem is really quite insurmountable, if you will, unless you have an approach and a methodology and systems to handle it. So those were kind of our general findings. For the manufacturers, what we found was that most of the manufacturers just throw resources at this thing and employ people to manually create spreadsheets or lists or whatever, which require countless hours of work to provide this data to the distributors. And you know who they're using? They're using temps. They're using admin people because they have the capacity. The problem is they don't have the knowledge. So they then have to go scour the organization for the manuals, for the data, for the product managers to actually provide this stuff. One of the marketing managers at one of the power transmission companies, he said, I would estimate I spend 40% of my time just looking for data internally. I mean, it's that bad. That's how much of it is. And another interesting finding from the manufacturer perspective, there's the carrot, Rich, which is the increased sales and all those things I've been talking about. But a lot of the manufacturers actually provide the data or whatever they can out of fear that they're going to lose their quality distributor relationship, and this is again their sales channel. So they provide whatever they can, whenever they can, however they can. It's a fear factor kind of thing, which isn't a positive way to approach the problem. The distributors, similar type thing. They assign employees to take the manufacturer data and manually load it. And what we hear from the distributors, a lot of times the templates that they provide, the manufacturers don't understand them or understand what they need, so they fill them all in, but they're wrong, and then they have to go back and reformat them. And they're not staffed either. One of the distributors that we work with here in Ohio that I work with, they said they have 1.5 people, and they have 12,000 suppliers who have hundreds or thousands of products each. The math is just crazy. There's no way for 1.5 people to manage and maintain that much data. And what they're telling us, too, is if they had to pick between two vendors, the distributors are telling us that quality and amount of data available actually is part of their selection process when they pick a manufacturer. So I think that's kind of good to know if you're a manufacturer. This is another thing that you can do to set yourself apart from a competitor, is providing quality data to your distributors.
And that resources has to be a real challenge right now, particularly with people being so stretched as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, and they try to use people. They put resources there, but they're not always the right resources. This is where the admins and the temps come in. So it's bodies, but it's not necessarily the most efficient bodies. And then every time there's a new request, it's another fire drill. Instead of coming at this with a methodology and putting some tools and some systems in place, because this request for data is not going to go away. More distributors, more data, more recurrence of updates. So that's the manufacturers really need to get their head around that and say this is something that we have to do forever, and here's the approach we're going to take.